You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. In this episode, my guest shares her spirit for participation in Ultra events and throws in lots of tips learned from her mistakes and triumph on various courses. Get your notebook out and enjoy these Ultra tales right after this quick message about Ultra Tri-Fest Canada. After postponing the 2024 Ultra Tri-Fest Canada, people started coming out of the woodwork to say that they were thinking about or intending to sign up for one of the events. This is the race director's dilemma. You see, athletes, we have to confirm our locations and pay upfront for a number of fees in order to host you at these events. I realize that COVID has created a gun-shy athlete who is wanting to sign up at the last possible minute, but these two mindsets are in major conflict. This is why I am now asking for potential athletes to at least contact me with your expression of interest in the events in 2025. This will allow me to gauge the potential athlete pool and determine the viability. If you think you would like to come, send me an email and we can chat. Let's work together to continue to grow the Ultra Tri community and opportunities for new races at new locations. Trust me, Whistler is spectacular. Email me at ultratrifestcanada@gmail.com. Today's Ohana guest completed 6 iron distance events before moving up to the 515 distance. She has competed in 3 Ultraman races in Canada, Australia, and Hawaii. Then she decided to become even more epic when she was the second woman ever to complete the Epic 5 in 2017. Always looking for a more superlative adjective, she became the first woman to finish Uberman. Joining me today from one of the most livable cities in the world, Melbourne, Australia, Melissa Urie. Welcome to 515.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here. Lovely to meet you.
Yes, it's lovely to meet you. Just before we started this, we were talking about how we have so many friends in common. It's amazing that we haven't had this before.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, as longtime listeners to my show will know, I lived in Perth, Australia for a year when I did a teacher exchange with your coach, Kate Bevilacqua. Unfortunately for me and the family, Melbourne was the one place that we did not get to go to in Oz. I've heard it described as similar to Montreal here in Canada, in that it has lots of culture and vitality. Melbourne was on the top of the livability rankings for 7 years in a row, and it's still up there today. What makes your city so great?
Oh my God, where do I start? It's really interesting because when we have people come to Melbourne, it's like we don't have big tourist attractions. Like we don't have the Sydney Harbour Bridge. We don't have the Opera House. It's like, where do we go? I'm like, you just got to feel it. Like I haven't been to Montreal. I've been to Canada. Obviously I did Ultraman Canada and I spent a bit of time there, but haven't been that far over. I've been to Vancouver and BC, and then I went to Saskatchewan to visit my cousin. So yeah, but it's just the feeling of it. It's the culture, it's the people. And it's just, I don't know, I grew up in the country, and for me, it was always Melbourne was going to be where I'd go to study and now work and live. And now I'm raising a family here. So I don't know, it just feels like a really easy city to live in. It's not hard, it's not hard to get around. I've lived both east, west, I know a lot of the city, and it's just a beautiful place.
Mm. Yeah. And I think that's the way a lot of people feel about their city is it's hard to describe, but if you love your city, it's the vibe of the city. It's those little places you go to that you feel that this is why I live here. And yeah, that can be hard to describe sometimes. I'm sorry I put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I've never had that question before. I'm like, oh, hang on. What do I say to this?
And what is it like for triathlon training and the triathlon vibe? I mean, Australia is so popular for triathlon all around. Is it an easy place to train? Are there clubs? Are there people to work out with? Do you have to kind of like go on a car ride to get to a place to do a long, safe bike ride, or can you bike right out of your door? How's that line up?
Yeah, so it's really good. We have I wouldn't even know how many triathlon clubs we have in Melbourne. There's so many. There's one this side of town, the Western Suburbs Triathlon Club, that I'm not a member at the moment because I'm not doing triathlons currently because I've got young kids and one on the way. Young daughter and one on the way. But it just everybody's really supportive. We have like race series, duathlon and triathlon that run throughout the year. Really, really supportive. There's so many like park runs and, fun runs and things you can do. For bike riding, the most famous area would be Beach Road, where you can get, up to 20,000 people riding over a weekend. Like it is ridiculous. And it's that if you want flat riding, you can go there. If you want hills, for me personally, I have to get in the car and drive.
Mm.
But there's, like the Dandenongs is really, really popular. And God, when I was training for Uberman Epic 5, I'd spend 8-9 hours like just riding up and down hills, running all around there. And it's really easily accessible. I mean, you get people who aren't very nice drivers all the time, but I find if you go to places where there's a lot of cyclists, people are more used to it and they're kind of like a little bit more tolerant most of the time. Right. So it's really, really accessible. I've got trail running. If I, get in the car and drive for 20 minutes, I've got, a beautiful state park that I can go run all around in. It's just really, really good, really accessible.
Excellent. Yeah. So what was it that got you into triathlon? Was there a person or did you, were you part of one of the sports in the past? What was it that got you onto the sport of triathlon?
Yeah, so I was always someone who, just liked a bit of exercise here and there. I wasn't, someone who would be, exercising or training all the time. Like being an Australian, you grow up, in the water. Yeah. Basically, my mum used to be a swim teacher many, many years ago. So, she was very, very passionate about my brother and I swimming from an early age. And I got into bike riding a bit later on when I was in high school, but I'd never run. Like running was never a thing that, ever interested me. I thought it was ridiculous. Like, why would you run? It's a stupid sport. Look at me now. Yeah. But yeah, like I just, had finished uni, started working, and I'm like, all right, time to focus a bit more on my health. I wanted to get fit. I wanted to, lose a bit of weight, just kind of the usual story. Mm-hmm. And I went and saw a friend do a triathlon. She did, one of the race series races. And I looked at it and I was like, everyone just looks like they're having so much fun. Just looks absolutely amazing. And I was like, I want to be part of this. So, I was like, well, I've got the swim and bike, but I just need the run. So, it was towards the end of the triathlon season that I saw her do that. So over the winter, I did a couple of fun runs and decided just to enter, a little baby triathlon, a little mini one, right. Like 200-meter swim, 10K ride, 2K run, something like that, and just loved it. And I was like, let's do this. Let's keep going. So that was my little journey into it.
And around what year was that?
It was around, I'd say probably like 2004, 2005 that I'd started. Yeah.
And then you started, obviously, as people do, you kind of start working your way up the stages and getting bigger and bigger. And then when did you start doing the iron distance?
So I did my first Ironman in 2009. That particular friend who was into triathlon at the time, she's more cycling now. She told me about a work friend who was doing Ironman. I was like, oh, what's that? And so, I did a bit of research. I'm like, oh, that looks like fun, as you do. I'd done an Olympic distance at that time. And I said to her, I was like, okay, so I need a coach. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, can you guide me? And so she put me on to my very first coach that I ever had, a guy called Kevin Parkhill, and he was amazing. And he said to me, he's like, yeah, I can get you to Ironman, that's fine, but why don't you do a half first? And so, that was 2008. And then 2009 did Ironman Australia. And I just remember like crossing the line my first half Ironman. I'm like, I just want to do that again. Like, I just want to let's go. Like, bring it on. And then the same feeling after Ironman. I'm like, that was just absolutely incredible. I just loved it.
Yeah. And you did 6, basically like one a year. Is that?
Yeah.
So which of the races was your favorite?
I would have to say probably Challenge Wanaka, with the old course. So now, I don't know if there's still an iron distance there. I think it's a half now. But anyway, the old course used to be one lap of 180 K bike. And it was the most ridiculous weather day I've ever been. Like nowadays the swim probably would have been cancelled. Like when we got up in the morning, the wind was blowing so hard. It was it was like 100 k's an hour by midnight when people were finishing the wind, and it was probably about half that when the swim was starting. It was so rough. It was just ridiculous. I remember when I was coming down this particular hill over a bridge, and I could see people turning left to go, back up the bike course, and I could see every single person ahead of me just suddenly drop their head and just like, oh, and I was like, okay, that's where the wind is really going to kill us. And people getting blown off their bikes, like had to move into the middle of the road to take your hands off the handlebars because you knew you were going to get blown by the crosswind. Right. But that was the only way you could take a drink, otherwise you get blown off the road. And it was just ridiculous, but amazing at the same time, like on how tough it was. And I just had the mindset of like, let's just go out and have fun with this. Let's just play. Like, I don't care about finish times. I want to finish this. It is the most beautiful place I've ever been in the world. Like, I just absolutely love Wanaka. If it wasn't so cold and snowy, I would probably want to move there. But I don't do that cold weather too well. Oh, yeah. But that's definitely like my kind of standout highlight out of all of those.
Nice.
That, and I have to also say Ironman New Zealand because that's where I met my husband.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we'll just add that on.
Yeah. But in terms of courses, Wanaka's, definitely my favorite.
Nice, yeah. And then, like most people, you found out that there was something even larger than Ironman. And like most people, you learned it in a book.
I did.
Tell me about...
Yeah. So I actually met Rich Roll, and I was able to personally thank him for his book.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. I've been interviewed by him a couple of times. So that was that was really, really cool, full circle moment there. Yeah. So I had a friend put me onto this book in 2010, and he's like, hey, you should read this, this book, Finding Ultra. And I was like, oh yeah, cool, no worries. And so I read it, and I was reading about Ultraman. I was like, wow, this just looks and sounds incredible. And so, hopped on Google, what's this all about? Where are the races and everything? Yeah. And I had this thing since, I don't know, something about Canada that's just always drawn me since I was a kid. I've always wanted to go there. I love big mountains. I just love the look of it. Mm-hmm. And so when I found out there was a race in Canada, I was like, oh, interesting. That's got my attention. So, but at the same time, I also had like the logical part of my brain saying, you're not ready yet. You're not, there's no way you're going to be able to get through the amount of training required to get to the race because you have not enough like sporting history or, anything like that. So I set the date kind of further in advance of like, all right, when I want to do Ultraman, but probably like 2014 would give me enough base then to be able to get there. And also I had met some friends in New Zealand, and we'd all decided that we wanted to do Challenge Roth together in 2013.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, maybe the year after I can make that happen. So, that's why I kind of, it took me about 4 years to get there, but I was like, no, it was definitely worth waiting and letting my body absorb all the training I'd done and kind of, be able to prepare a little bit better than just kind of jumping into the next year. I don't think I would have survived.
Right. Yeah. And so were you still with your same coach at that time, or had you moved on to another coach?
Yeah, no, I was with Kev then. Yeah. I changed coaches in 2016 to Craig Percival. Okay. Yeah. So I was still with Kev.
Another Ultraman legend?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in 2014, then you come over and do Steve Brown's Ultraman Canada. And Lucy and I were actually at that race as well in 2014. We were crewing for Tony Horton, who shortly thereafter went on and founded Ultraman Australia. So I'm guessing that this is the race where you likely also met Will Rogers for the first time, who will come into the story a little bit later. And
he does.
and Chad Bentley, who's another Epic 5 racer, was at that race as well. Nick Mallet was there. So it was, a lot of people in the circle that you would come back around to a number of times at that race for you. So other than the people that you met there, what's your kind of best memory or takeaway from the Ultraman Canada race in 2014?
Yeah. So as you said, like I've definitely made lifelong friends from that race. Will in particular, he's amazing. Love him. So that was the hardest race I've done. Like out of all the races, I can still say that is the hardest race I've ever done, purely because of everything leading up to that. so the race was in August. In December the previous year, I was knocked off my bike and I broke a vertebrae in my back in December. And so it was, basically one of my first rides. It's like, okay, we're now going to focus on doing Ultraman, this is going to be. And then the next thing I'm ringing my coach just saying, I'm in hospital. I've got a broken back. What do I do? And he, the first thing he said to me, and it was the most reassuring thing I've heard in my life. He goes, it'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll get you there. And I was like, okay, amazing. I'm like, I 100% trust you. And, I went to my osteo and he said exactly the same thing. He's like, we'll be fine. And I'm like, oh, amazing. Then the following May, because I did Ironman Cairns as a lead-up race for that, I fell off my bike again and broke a wrist. And I was like, what the hell? My coach said to me, like, no more riding outside for you until you get to Canada. I was like, okay, 7 hours on the wind trainer, fine, whatever. I'll just suck it up and do it. So for me, it was just like getting to the race was ridiculous. Like it was really, really hard to actually physically get myself there. And then during the race, I made so many nutrition mistakes. I had no idea what I was doing. And I still feel like I'm learning. Right. I'd never stop learning with that. And so on day 2 on the bike ride, I couldn't keep anything down for the last 4 hours of the ride. I just threw up constantly. I was so dizzy. I was so out of it. My back seized up. I couldn't go on my aero bars. I couldn't reach the middle pocket in my jersey because my shoulders and back was just so tight. There's actually a picture that I think I sent you of my husband and another guy changing the back wheel on my tire, because what had happened is when I went up for the last turn before you come down to the finish of day 2, I thought to myself beforehand, I was like, oh, I've got a flat tire, I need to tell them. And I'd actually stopped to get some painkillers because I was in so much pain, and I had completely forgotten to tell them because I was so out of it. And so I did the turn and I saw the mechanic and he was looking at me and kind of crouched down, looking at my wheel, and I was like, oh my God, I yelled out, I was like, do I have a flat tire? I'd completely forgotten. And because it was so hard for me to get off my bike, I literally had to lay my bike down on the ground for me to get off because my hips were so tight. I was just like, I'm just going to stand on my bike and you can change my back wheel for me. Which was ridiculous. And then, so the end of the day, that's when Will really was just like, who is this person? Because I lay down on one of the massage tables and I literally couldn't sit up. I was so dizzy. And Will's lying next to me. He's like, what has she done to herself? She needs to be in hospital. Everyone's basically saying there is a hospital nearby. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I can't go there because I'll be disqualified and I can't, and I was like, I'll be fine. I'll be right. Anyway, so then I turn up to day 3 and Will, he said to me late, he's like, oh my God, she's here. What the hell? And I was like, I'm still alive. And then, I got through the run. It took me about 30 Ks before I started to feel good again of running and slowly be able to hold food down again and actually feel okay. And then about 50 Ks, I was that really annoying person who was just so energetic and loving life. And I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. Anyway, I finished and then ended up in hospital that night and stayed overnight. The lovely Canada health system helped me out. But I ended up having, 4 bags of IV saline to, get me back up and running again because I just lost so much salt. I was just I'd put on 10 pounds after the second day and I was like, that's weird. And then I've since learned that was because, I just didn't have enough salt on board and my body was just, just retaining as much fluid as possible, which is not a good thing. So for me, just that whole race and just, I was like, wow, I am a lot mentally tougher than I realized to be able to still get through all of that despite everything. Everything was basically against me and I was like, no, I'm still going to finish this. I'm still going to get it done. And it's just, again, one of those ridiculously hard races that stands out in my mind is just that was just one of the most incredible experiences of my life.
And probably the one where you learned the most to carry you on to these other epic and Uber adventures that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, listener, I have some fantastic guests coming up in the next few months. One who will be mentioned in the next segment, and Tony O'Keefe. He is a multi-time Ram soloist. Here is a quick preview of my conversation with Tony.
You know how I got into this whole gig? Was him. In 2002, I want to say, I was the coach of the Canadian Forces triathlon team, and we went out to Victoria for the Canadian National Championships that brought the military team out. And I met Steve in the airport on the way home. Mm. And I knew him from Ironman Canada, but with nothing but respect. And we sat and he chatted for a while, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, what's next for you? What do you want to do?" And I said, I wanted to do this Ultraman thing. And I talked for a bit, and he just looked at me and says, "Well, what are you waiting for?" I went, honest to God, I went home and I signed up right then. Mm. And I did it at 2002, and it was Steve King. We became very good friends after that. I talked to him about RAM when I wanted to do RAM. It was him I called to get his ideas on what to do. But in 2002, this guy Dan Bodden, he's done Ultraman, and Marty Raymond, who's a fixture at Ultraman. I know he's done it like 11 or 12 times. But he was my crew with me, Jackie, Marty, and Dan, and we're like a family now, anyways. But the four of us went over there, and we got ourselves ready and took on that race.
And then I guess the next one was Ultraman Australia for you.
Yes.
Back when it was the official Ultraman, when it was first starting out with Tony there. Have you been back ever to crew there or see the race again since you've raced there? Yeah,
so I went the year after in 2015 and crewed. It was the first year that it was run. Crewed for a guy from Brunei, and he was lovely, and that was really, really fun. And then I went after I did Epic 5 in 2017. I went and crewed for Will at that race as well. Okay. So I literally finished Epic 5 and then got on a plane and flew to Australia and crewed for him up in Noosa. So yeah. Okay. Not an experience I recommend, getting on a plane so quickly after doing such an event. But yeah, no, I've been a couple of times, and then I went and crewed for my coach Kate when she did it as well. So yeah, I've been back a few times.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. And of course you did Ultraman Hawaii, because if you're going to be in the Ultraman world, you're going to make your way to Ultraman Hawaii eventually. How was that race for you?
Yeah, so that was the lava year. That was the year that the course was changed. Yeah. So they took us up over Saddle Road. So yeah, day one was a lot. I mean, I've only done it once, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But from all accounts, day one was a lot easier because you didn't have the climb to volcano at the end. But day two, they'd added on I don't know what the original course elevation is, but it ended up being about 4,000 meters of elevation compared to what it normally was. So yeah, I mean, day one was great. I had a really, really fun time. I had a really good paddler, really good swim, came out feeling good. I had been there for a couple of weeks, staying at my friend Ingrid Hillhouse's place. Oh, yeah. So yeah, she was,
also going to be on the podcast in a couple months.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, yes. I'll look forward to hearing about that one. I love to hear about her Paris Express Paris experience. That'd be amazing. Yeah. So I stayed there. So I felt like I was properly acclimatized to the heat, because we're coming out of Melbourne winter, actually going over there and, not dying in the Hawaiian sun. So yeah, day one was really good. And then day two was all anyone talked about, the whole time. Everyone was petrified of it. I was petrified of it. But I look at course previews, and I've driven some of it with Ingrid and P-Man as well, and taken me around. So I'd seen what it was all about. Because when I look at elevations, having Saddle Road in there is such a big climb, it really negates the other climbs after that. And so for me, it's always okay, so you've got the big climb, that's great, but what's after it? What else is going to be taking energy from my legs? What else is going to be, the climbs that you don't really think about, because all you're thinking about is the one big climb. And so it was good to be able to see that, to see what it was all about. But I ended up missing the bike cutoff. I was about 2.5 Ks at the 12-hour mark. So I was really, I was really close. But there's nothing else that I could have done that day. I just pushed myself ridiculously hard. And I was thinking about it earlier today. Doug, one of the referees, like he was telling me when I was descending at one stage, he was like trying to follow behind. He's like, I was struggling to keep up with you on a motorbike.
Oh,
you
wow.
you were. I was like, I was on a mission. I was trying everything I could, and yeah, so it's one of those ones. Like it feels like it's an asterisk next to that race because I feel like I'm not an official, finisher because I'm not, and I feel like I want to go back and right the wrongs of that. But at the same time, like there was. Like I don't have regrets about it. It's taken me a long time to kind of come to terms with, what happened. But my proudest time of that race, though, is finishing the run on the third day.
Right.
Because I pushed myself.
The participant and still doing the full event. Yeah, you're 2 minutes shy, but you did the full distance. You did the full event. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 2.5 Ks. So because like for the first half of the run, for the first marathon, I didn't know why I was doing it. Like I just kept saying to myself, I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I running? I don't know. I don't understand. What's the point basically? And so I ended up coming to the conclusion that until I came up with a reason to not be there, then I'm just going to continue going. And it had to be a reason that I would feel comfortable with waking up the next day and I would be accepting in myself that was a good enough reason to stop. And I couldn't come up with anything. So I was like, all right, well, that's it. That's what it is. And it was kind of like if I didn't finish or if I didn't at least try to finish, then what was the point of pushing on day 2?
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of where I landed. But, yeah, like I was pretty sick for the first marathon and wasn't in a great place. But, at the same time, like I'm one of those people who absolutely loves the Queen K. Like I love the lava. I love, the changing landscape of it. Like just the desolate nature of it. I just think it's absolutely beautiful. So I actually quite enjoyed running along it. So it was kind of nice. I haven't been back
and that's
since.
the thing about these ultra events that you do. You can be in a dark place and not know why you're doing it. And 2 hours later, you're feeling great. Like you were at the 50K mark at Ultraman Canada and suddenly you're cheery again.
Exactly. And I just sit with it. I was like, it's fine. Every moment passes, every feeling passes. So, you just sit with it until something else happens and you're like, okay, cool. We'll just continue on and know that this is not a feeling forever.
Until they say that time is up and you can't continue, you might as well because you don't know when that's going to turn around for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, the previous year, because that was 2018, you went over and did Epic 5 in 2017.
Yes.
And I said in the beginning that at that time you were the second woman to complete that race.
Yeah.
Just remind us again about what's entailed in the Epic 5 format.
Yeah, so it's 5 iron distance races over 5 days over 5 islands in Hawaii. So you start in Kauai, then you go to Oahu, Molokai, Maui, and then finish on the Big Island at the end of it.
Yeah. And this was probably the first time. I mean, with Ultraman, there's some logistical stuff you want to work out and what's in your crew vehicle and all that stuff. But for doing Epic 5, there's that whole island hopping thing and, all of that, trying to find sleep time and all those things. So this is probably the first time you dealt with these kind of logistical things. How did you prepare? Did you have advice from someone else before that? Do you have like a little handbook of these are the things we did? Or did you go in and just figure it out on your own with your crew?
Yeah, so I got in contact with the woman who was the first finisher, Danny Grable, and I just spoke to her. I was like, tell me everything. And she was amazing. Like she was really, really good to tell me a lot and give me a lot of advice and everything. Like I'm big on, sharing as much as I can with everybody who wants to know, basically. Right. If you want to know, I'm an open book, ask me anything, I will help you as much as I can. And she was that for me. So that was really, really helpful. I spoke with Rebecca, the race director as well, Rebecca Morgan, a fair bit. Yeah. And Jen McVeigh as well. She was super helpful because she's crewed a bunch of times. And she crewed for Juan Criveri that year that I did it as well. Yeah. So she was super helpful. So I just kind of basically just reached out to people that I knew in the community and was like, right, help. What do I need to know? What do I need to, do and plan and everything? And we kind of went from there. But I, at the time, was working shift work. And so it was actually really helpful to know how I was going to respond with sleep deprivation as well, because I do a night shift and then, either go and have a couple of hours sleep and get up and, go do a bike or swim or run or whatever, or, like drive straight to the pool after work and, just I found that was actually probably one of the most beneficial things to help with the sleep deprivation is like, actually, no, I can continue on even if I've had no sleep for, 10, 12 hours overnight. And then, I'm very, very good at power napping as well, which is a very good skill to have.
Yeah.
So, and I have this like ultimate determination and stubbornness that just doesn't let me quit. So as you might have gathered, so that like kind of the combination of a bunch of things definitely helped. But I left a lot because my husband and two friends were crewing for me, and I just left a lot of the logistics to them as well. And, my husband, like, he's very, very good crew in terms of like, he's like, your job is swim, bike, run. Don't think about anything else. You don't need to think about anything else. We've got everything else. And the stories they're telling me afterwards about like how sleep deprived they were and like how they'd be looking for something to be right in front of them. They're like, oh, I didn't see that. And like, they'll be holding a pen and be like, where's that pen? Like, just losing their minds. And like, I think it was quite entertaining to hear all the stories afterwards, but
of course,
they were just absolutely incredible. And they definitely kept me on track. And for them, the biggest thing was like, every island was a different car. And so it wasn't that restocking the car and repacking everything like you do after Ultraman.
It was down and redoing it completely. Yeah.
And bike building and, packing and, making sure that we're going to get through security with everything. We're not like putting wrong things in wrong bags and kind of all of those things. So there's a lot of logistics behind the scenes that I didn't have to worry about at all, which was amazing. That's exactly what you want, basically.
Epic 5 would have just happened for this year. So we'll have to see if anybody got in there and knocked you down the ladder of your finishes.
Yeah.
See who are the new people out there that are Epic 5 finishers. So check that out. If I'll put a link in the show notes to their results, and people can see how this year's class did at Epic 5. Yeah. You mentioned that Juan Criveri was there that year, and I was looking at the results. He finished, I believe, just ahead of you, and just behind you was another guest of the show, Armando Armelini. Now, were you able, while racing, to be able to get to know these gentlemen? Because these are two fantastic gentlemen. Or was it like afterwards, or how did that happen for you?
Oh my God, I love Armando. All these people are so good, so nice. So I met one the year before when I was crewing, 2015. I was crewing, in Ultraman Australia, and he was over there with Jen and Molly, doing the race as well. So I'd already met him. Beforehand, so I've got a bit of a meet and greet, and I was able to meet a few people then. And there was another Australian, Duncan, as well, who I was able to kind of connect with a little bit. So I kind of made a few friends, but I was the only female out of 10 athletes. And I mean, I think I was kind of looked at as like, okay, I wonder how she's going to go. And then I really saw a kind of a change in respect being built over the time from a lot of the faster guys as well. They'd kind of be like, oh, you're still here, like, well done. And afterwards, day 3, 4, 5, like everyone was just like cheering each other on. Everyone was so supportive of each other. It was just so lovely. But I mean, during the actual event, you're waving at people, like you're not really riding with anyone. Like Juan had a lot of bike troubles that year. I was seeing him a fair bit, he's a much stronger rider than I am. So generally I wouldn't have seen him, but I was seeing him a fair bit then. And Armando was generally around nearby where I was as well a lot of the time too. So, like with Ultraman, you kind of, whoever you're roughly timed with, like you'll see a fair bit of, and your crews probably hang out more than you do with any of the other athletes.
Yes,
but then
that's why I've always enjoyed crewing. You get to meet lots of people.
It's so much fun. I love it. I love racing. I love crewing. So like we're able to kind of see each other a bit, and then afterwards at the wrap party as well, after the awards and things, we're able to kind of hang out with people a little bit more then too.
I've crewed, I don't know, 13 times or something now for various races. And Juan, I crewed him at Ultraman Canada. Easiest person I've ever crewed for.
I've heard that from so many people.
Love you,
The most
Juan.
relaxed, the most chilled person in the world.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. People write to me at 515ultraman@gmail.com or reach out through Facebook to ask how they can support the show since it's offered for free. Well, the next time a friend or family member is looking for a podcast to listen to, tell them that you enjoy 515 the Ultra Podcast. Or share my Facebook and Instagram posts on your timeline to reach your friends. It is really that simple. Recommendations are one of the most important ways that podcasts grow. Thank you again for listening and for doing your part to share the show. Well, let's talk a little bit about your life outside of Ultra. You were saying that you're now the mother of a young child. You got another one on the way. When is your baby due?
A couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks. So anytime.
Yeah. So this will be out after they're born. Yeah. So
yes, you'll have to send me a photo.
Yes,
and then we'll put that on for the advertising for this.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I'll do that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I got pregnant in 2021, so it was like mid-COVID madness and all of that. So it was actually good timing because after Uberman, I needed a break. Like mentally, I was cooked, I was done. I just needed some downtime, needed to step away from ultras for a little bit because I just put so much into it.
Right.
And then obviously everything kind of got taken away anyway, like in Australia especially, like all races were cancelled, we weren't able to travel, do anything. So I'm like,
you
okay,
weren't
cool.
even allowed to leave your own city.
No, we weren't. Like one stage, unless you were working, you weren't allowed to go more than 5 kilometers from your house. Like it was it was ridiculous. So it was actually good timing in some ways because I was ready for that break. It was just kind of everyone else in the world had a break at the same time.
Yeah. I just kept the level playing field for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. There is one positive to this. Yeah. And so then, so my daughter's now, she'll be 2.5 in May. So yeah, I feel like at the moment I'm in that family focused season of my life. And so, yeah, like obviously having this other baby on the way, like I'm not doing any racing. Like I'm, still doing a couple of gym sessions a week, go for a walk with my daughter. If she wants to get in the pram, then I can walk a little bit faster than if she doesn't. But that's kind of my levels of activity at the moment. But I'm actually quite fine with that. Like I don't feel like I want to get back into ultra racing or, any kind of racing at this point in time. Like I have done a few fun runs. I've actually done fun runs when I've been pregnant with both kids.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I did like a 3-day, it was like a 10K, a 21, a marathon trail running. And then with this one, I did a half marathon. It was early on. Oh. But yeah, like it's fulfilling enough for me at the moment. Like I don't feel like I need to do anything else currently. I will get back to it, but for now I'm just content focusing on family a lot more than anything at the moment.
Right. So you work as a mental health nurse for your full-time job. I'm wondering, you were talking about during COVID and stuff like that. How was it for you working during that time? Was there like a spike of people that were needing a little bit of extra attention? And how do you see it post-COVID? Do you feel like there's been more mental health issues in the general population post-COVID that might be a result of COVID? I don't get the opportunity to speak to mental health professionals very often. It's just something I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah, it was really interesting at the start because I work in a general hospital, and it was almost like hospitals were seen as a place that you would go and get COVID and get sick. So people didn't want to go.
Right.
And also we kind of theorized that there was a lot more support at home for people because everybody was locked in their houses. So a lot less people initially were coming into hospital. So that was really interesting because we thought it was going to be the opposite. We thought it'd be a lot more, the other way around, with a lot more people coming in initially. But then, after a period of time, because we had quite intense lockdown periods, then,
Right.
we had people who were just like, sick of this, can't do it anymore, and then that was when, we saw more of a spike happening. There definitely is a lot of kind of trauma that people, I don't know whether they're really actually acknowledging it so much out of that period of time, because I was talking to actually one of the doctors that I work with before I finished up for my maternity leave, and she was saying, like, I feel like, even health professionals, we've just kind of gone, well, that's happened, move on to the next, thing. And we're not really kind of sitting back and reflecting and acknowledging actually how intense that was for everybody. And, she was saying that she was having kind of negative associations with a pair of shoes that she'd wear to work, because we were told, like, when you come home, like, because she was working in an emergency department at that point in time, like, change your clothes, have a shower, like, don't bring anything inside. We didn't know how the virus was being transferred, and, she didn't want to get her family sick or anything. And, she saw this pair of shoes that she'd wear every day to work, and she's like, she just had to throw them out, because she's like, I just can't have that association there anymore. And I think there's kind of a lot of that people aren't necessarily recognizing. I think in general, like, mental health is definitely, there's a lot more awareness of it. But in some ways it's like, you can talk about it, but if you have kind of enduring, quite severe mental health concerns, then it's also really, really difficult for people in your support networks then to know what to do after a period of time. It's like, I've supported you through this, you're okay now. But then if people are having relapses, if people are having ongoing enduring symptoms, then people are like, oh, okay, so what do I do now? Like, I thought you were better. And so there's still a long way to go for people in general. But I think there's still a lot of hang-ups from COVID. And we had a lot more support from the government that then's been slowly stepped back as well. So I think that's really affecting a lot of people too. So there's a lot of learnings from it. And it's one of those things, like, you don't know what it's going to be like until, 5-10 years down the track as well, with all the effects on all the young people that have gone through that and had to live through that. And we're not going to know what that's going to be like until, they're a bit older as well. So
yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because I'm a high school teacher, and the kids are different. I don't know if it's because of COVID, but the kids are different now, and I don't know if it's the same down there. If you're seeing, like, it almost seems like the period of COVID, they stopped all mental growth during that time, and they're all kind of delayed in their ways of communicating and presenting themselves. And it's a strange thing. I'm just wondering, is that something that the mental health people are seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that, like, socialization, those kind of adolescent years that are just so formative to people. And, when you're locked in your house for 2 years, only be able to communicate digitally with your friends, like, you're not having those interactions where you can actually read body language and, pick up on nuances, pick up on inflection in tone, and, all those little kind of subtle things that you learn just by spending time with your friends. It's definitely something that I think, will be a big thing for generations. And as you said, like, as a teacher, you can see that, you don't have to be a mental health professional to see that. And it is really quite obvious. And like, some kids thrived because, they're little introverted homebodies that loved being at home and loved not having to go out. But there's a lot who really will have to learn those skills at a later age than what they normally would have as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, I wanted to dig in on that a little bit, your professional opinion. But maybe let's get back into your racing career, because, we've had a few people on the podcast that have either crewed at Uberman like Will, or have been wanting to do Uberman like Juan. And you've actually done it. And I know lots of people out there know about this, and maybe it's their next step. So I want to hear a little bit more about your experience with Uberman, and hopefully we can get a little more detail on that. Maybe start off by reminding us exactly what the race entails, the distances, and where you're traveling from and to.
Yeah. So, Uberman, oh my God. It's ridiculous. So, I mean, the reason why I wanted to do it is because I wanted to do the Death Valley Run and the Catalina Swim. And it has both of those things with a bike ride to join the two together. So that was kind of my like look at it. And I was like, oh, and I could be the first female. That's pretty fun. So that was kind of my, my catalyst to wanting to do it. So it's a 34-kilometre swim from Catalina Island across the mainland in California to a place, Palos Verdes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get on your bike and you ride, it's about 640 kilometres through to Death Valley, where the start of the Badwater Run is. And then that is, 135 miles. So it's about 217-kilometre run up to the Mount Whitney portal. So there's no time limits, which is interesting. It's the first race I've ever done. Well, it's not a race because it's not an official event.
Right.
It's, you can start at this time, we'll record times, we'll put your name on a website, but it's not, official sanctioned race as such.
Does it have an official start day, or can you kind of go just do it anytime you want?
To be part of like the Uberman thing, yes, it does. It has an official start day and time.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we ended up starting a little bit earlier. So, you start whenever. You just tell Dan, the race organizer, director. I don't really know what to call him. The brainchild behind
the founder of the event.
Yes, that's a good word. The founder of it. So, you tell him when you've started, like your crew, text him, and then, text him when you finish the swim, and then when you finish the bikes, then he has, the times recorded in that way.
Right.
But a lot of it is just basically up to you. And so if you wanted to take, he did it in sections. So I think maybe took like 6 months or something to do it. He'd just go out, run a section and then go home again. And then, because he had other work commitments and family commitments and things. But he just, put it out there and said, if anyone wants to do this as a continuous thing, then, great, come on and do it.
Right. And so how does one train for Uberman that would be different than, like when you go from Ironman to Ultraman, most people are able to train pretty much the same, put in some work on their swim distance maybe and mentally prepare to run a double marathon, which most people have never done. But the biking is usually not that much of an issue between those two disciplines. How much different is it now to go from Ultraman to Uberman, and how did you prepare for that?
Yeah, I find that question really interesting because I'm like, how do you train for it? It's like, well, I trained for 10 years for it because I'd been doing racing by that stage, for about 10 years of Ironmans and Ultramans and things. So it's a lot of like that really long base fitness that you have.
Mm-hmm.
In talking to my coach, Kate, she really wanted to focus on the swim bike for me, just to get as strong as possible to then be as, kind of fresh as possible as you can to get to the run. And then the run will just sort itself out was basically our kind of philosophy that we did that. So I did a lot of hills on the bike. I really like to not think when I'm training. I really like to just switch my brain off and just daydream and things. And so I would actually end up finding myself just doing hill repeats so I didn't have to think about where else I wanted to ride. So I would just sit on the same hill quite happily for, 7-8 hours of just doing hill repeats up and down. Because I knew every single corner, everything. So when I was in that really fatigued state, I knew that I had to slow down for this particular corner or, watch out for this, particular things. And it just made my life a lot easier. But so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of double swim days. So I do, I think, I'd have to look back through my training logs, but I think my biggest swim day probably would have been about 12 kilometres, 8 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon. A lot of that, just a lot of back-to-back big days.
Right.
My days off would just be, going and doing, 7-8 hours of training, back-to-back days, just so I got used to still going through fatigue, as with Epic 5 as well. It's just still being able to continue on, even though you feel like absolute death. And the last thing you want to do is get back on your bike or pull your runners on. You're like, no, let's get out the door and let's do this. With my running, I did a lot of 50K races because there's a lot of really beautiful trail runs run by a series, Trails Plus, around in Victoria. So I did, I think maybe about 5 of those because I wanted to kind of get to the 50K point to go on the run and be like, well, I've done this distance. I know how to do this.
Oh, yeah.
So that for me was important. But I'd also generally go into it in a fatigue state. I wouldn't go into it rested. I wldn't go into it. like fully fresh or anything, fully tapered, because it wasn't the point of it. It was the point of, training through, continuing on through that. So
Right.
yeah, that was kind of how we approached it.
And the year that you did it, how many other people were doing it?
There was two others.
Two others. And
Two other
how
guys.
often were you able to see those other people while you were out there? Did you cross paths?
I did in the swim because I overtook one of them. That was fun. That was the fastest swim time. Still have the fastest swim time record. Thank you very much. Yeah, still proud of that one. Yeah, and then I saw. So, oh my God, his name's left me. So the guy who ended up like winning.
Adam.
Yes. Jonathan. So Jonathan was a couple of days behind me in terms of his finish. Amanda was actually crewing for him, and Fiona Simiak. I don't know how to pronounce this. Yeah. So again, other ultra friends.
And that was Jonathan Poskalski.
Yes.
Is that how you say it? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
So Jonathan took a lot longer in the swim. So I saw him once when I was on the run leaving. So if you know the Badwater Run course,
yeah,
there, you go through all Death Valley, you go through the really flat section, and then the first climb, I was heading up that on the run as he was coming down on the bike. And that was amazing. Like, I loved, he stopped, we had a hug, we just said hi, and that was awesome. So I saw him once. I saw Adam, I overtook him in the swim because he started a little bit before I did. Mm-hmm. And then I was resting in the camper van that we had when he overtook me on the bike. And then he came out and found me because he'd already finished when I was climbing Mount Whitney towards the end of the run. So, he came and found me and said hi and congratulations and everything. Mm. Yeah, so that was nice.
And do I have his name correct? Is Adam Scully Power?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, good job.
Did a little research.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Now, your record swim time was 11 hours and 54 minutes for 34 kilometers. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm sure most people wouldn't even attempt it. Now, when you're working out the logistics of that part of the race, how do you plan it? Like, do you start at night so there's less marine traffic? And then how many, watercraft do you have coming with you for support and stuff like that? What goes on for the swim portion?
So I have a lot of ultra friends through various distance and various sports. And so I've got a lot of ultra swim friends. And so I just reached out to them and said, what do I do? Like, what do I need? Tell me, give me all the information. And I had someone who had done the Catalina swim, and I knew it was a night start because the tides are favorable overnight. Mm-hmm. And so every Catalina swim starts at nighttime. So I already knew that was going to be the plan. Mm-hmm. We had a boat and a paddler because I really like having a paddler to feed from. I find it's just so much easier than I've never tried to feed from a boat, and it's just not something that I've ever done in any of my races. So I had a friend, a friend of a friend come and paddle for me. So that was really, really helpful. Kevin, my paddler, came and paddled for me. I do not know surnames. And then, I had a couple other crew, Josie and Heidi on the boat with me. Mm-hmm. And, so they just, pass nutrition back and forth, as you do to the paddler. And then, I'd feed directly from Kevin.
Okay.
The one main thing that I really didn't account for, because, usually open water swims are in non-wetsuit swims if you're going to do it as an official open water swim. But I was like, no, I want to, conserve as much energy as possible. So I wore a wetsuit. Mm-hmm. But I didn't account for swimming 34 Ks in salt water in a wetsuit and the amount of chafe that I was going to have around my neck. So I put some tape on the back of my neck, but that fell off and I ended up ripping it off at about 10 Ks in. Mm. So I had 24 Ks of, just bare wetsuit on my neck. So I just, oh my God.
And these are the reasons why people listen to the podcast. It's these tiny little tips that they're picking up that they want to get. Yeah.
So if I was, not that I will do this race again because I don't need to, but if I was to say to anybody to do it again, get what a lot of people call, who do the English Channel swim, channel grease. So it's like a combination of, I don't know, a couple of different things, and they all wear it. And it's like super thick, super disgusting, but it helps with chafe. So I would use something like that again. Yeah, so like it was, I think I started about like 9:30 at night, and then swam through to the next morning. I was pretty out of it by the time we finished. I was swimming at one stage, and I kept like pushing the paddler away. I was like, "Why do you keep like bapping into me?" And he just stopped, and he's like, "You're swimming straight into me every single time you do that." I was like, "Oh, sorry."
Yeah.
But he was so lovely. Like I was getting more annoyed at him than he was with me. And then it was actually really interesting because I'd spoken to a guy, one of Man's friends, Alvin, and he said to me, he's like, before you get to the end, the last, like few kilometers or whatever, when don't look to the shore because, it's actually going to be further away than what you think. I was like, no worries, yeah, cool. Yeah. But of course I did. Of course, I'm like looking up going, oh, wow, that looks really close. Probably like an hour or so away. It ended up being like 2 hours away. And I was like, that's why he told me not to look. Okay. Right. But, who's not going to? Yeah. But it was interesting because beforehand, when I'd been speaking to Dan, the founder of the race, he was saying, like, oh, no one's swum under 12 hours. So, I don't really expect to have to be down at the water to meet anybody until, that time. And I was like, interesting. And so like it kind of, I didn't have race goals. I had like an overall, I'd like to finish this in 5 days in the back of my mind. But then, 12 hours suddenly became like, oh, well, let's see if we can get under that if possible. And being able to do that was pretty awesome. And then it was great when I got to the beach because there were these ladies who were like, oh my God, where have you swum from? What have you been doing? Like they just wanted to chat and they wanted to say hi. And it was so lovely. Yeah. But no, it was a really beautiful swim because I've never swum at night. I was actually really excited about doing that.
So you didn't do that in training?
No, I didn't do any night swimming because it was, again, like coming out of Melbourne winter, the water's way too cold to try and get in the bay to do any of that. I did a 10-mile swim when I was over in San Diego. I stayed with Man leading up to the race, and he was doing the La Jolla swim, and he told me about it. He's like, oh, usually it's a relay swim, but you can do it as an individual. And I was like, yeah, great, cool, I'll do that. So jumped in and did that. Yeah, well, absolutely, why not? So that was like I did, a couple of open water swims before that. So because I couldn't really do any swims at home before I left.
And that was Mahmoud Reba. Yes. Sorry, that you're referring to. That.
Yeah. I stayed with him for a couple of weeks, and he was so hospitable. He was so amazing. He was so generous. He was like, "Oh, thank you for coming and staying with me. Like, I love being part of all of this." And I was like, you're thanking me? Like, you're the one, like hosting me for all this time. And it was so lovely. Such a beautiful man.
And now I assume you spend a little bit of time in transition, get your legs back before you get on a bike. Do you take any sleep at that point, or are you just ready to go?
Yeah, I plan to sleep because there's a swim over in Perth, the Rottnest Island swim.
I saw that when I was there.
Yeah. And that was really fun. But when I got out of that, I wasn't in the best shape. And so I kind of learned, like, I feel like Uberman was just, I put together everything that I'd learned over the years on what to do and what not to do. So I was like, right, well, I'm swimming all night. I'm going to need a rest. I'm going to be dealing with LA traffic on the bike. I want to be as sharp as possible. I planned with my husband to have a rest and have a sleep, which actually was able to sleep a little bit before getting onto the bike. And because I'd finished, like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, I was able to have a couple of hours sleep, then have something to eat, then get on the bike, but not have to deal with peak hour traffic as bad as it potentially was going to be. Mm-hmm. So we'd actually planned that well in advance to say, you're not going to go straight.
Because you would have been flying down the highway and they would have been parked.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have seen them.
Exactly. I mean, there was a couple of times where I kind of had to like turn around and like find them and, things like that. But once we were out of LA and everything, it was much, much easier. But initially it was pretty stressful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, for me, like riding on the opposite side of the road and kind of dealing with all of that, like that was, pretty intense.
And I assume that you have a bike computer with the map on it for you to guide you, and you're like double checking, triple checking that it's charged properly and
Yes.
all
Yes.
those
We had
things as
two
part of the
Garmins.
logistics.
Yeah. Yeah. We had like everything. Yeah. Like Fiona had mapped out, all the course, my husband had mapped out all the course, loaded onto my Garmin. We had two. Yeah. Like we had, like everything. And I mean, once we got out of the main traffic, then it was a lot easier and they could, kind of drive ahead and stop,
Right.
for turns and things like that. But yeah, initially it was pretty intense. I was glad to
Now,
get through that bit.
now your crew for Uberman, obviously your husband was there. Have you worked with the other people in the crew either for Epic 5 or an Ultra or any other thing, or did you bring in new people? And how did you go about deciding, like, these are the people I need?
Yeah, so it basically because it's such a big commitment, I
It's
was,
whoever could get
people
the
was
time off of work.
basically I was like, who's an amazing person who's saying yes to this firstly.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband, he's an automatic yes anyway. He's like, oh, what are we doing now?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah, and then I just I put a call out on Facebook and I was like, is anyone keen? And one of my friends from Australia, he was like, yeah, I'll come over. Yeah, that'd be great. So he came over, and then I'd met Mary, Heidi, and Josie at Ultraman Hawaii the previous year, and I was telling them that I was planning on doing this, and at that time they all went, we're coming, we're there, we're 100% we're in. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And they're like, yeah, just tell us when, tell us where we need to be. And so yeah, I decided that I'd wanted, because the way that I kind of approached it was like, okay, so what do RAM riders do? Like, what do the Race Across America people do?
Right. Yeah.
And that was how I kind of structured my crew. Like, we had a day crew, we had a night crew. And so then we had like a camper van, which I'd never had, a bed to lie flat on during a race. Like during Epic 5, I was sleeping in the car, I was sleeping on the plane.
Right.
I was, like I was sleeping in a bed sometimes. But this time it was amazing. So I had, I had a toilet, I had a bed. It was luxury. And then we had Will, who'd driven his car down. So we had, a car that we could, kind of run around and get things as well. So, like by the end, it was basically like, who was saying yes, who was able to stay for what amount of time as well. Like I had one guy who had to leave at the start of the run, which was fine. So yeah, there was just who was around, and then Man, he came up on the run, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm just going to stay." He just refused to leave until the end. I was like, "Oh, I feel that. I hear you." So that was awesome. So
great.
Yeah, we did have people, kind of sub in and out a little bit, but yeah, we had kind of the main 5 people who stayed there the whole time, or 6 people. So that was awesome.
Great. Now, how do you deal with safety on the bike? You talked about, making sure you negotiate your way out of LA and stuff like that. And with RAM, I know that overnight they have a vehicle follow. Were you able to do that? Was it safe for you to do that when it wasn't RAM? Like what's going on for you when you're out in the evenings?
Yeah, so we had Will following in his car or the camper van, depending on generally not the camper van because it was so like big and just obstructive of all the traffic around. Yeah. But yeah, when I was riding at night, like had one of those like fluoro vests on, just try and be as, seen as possible. Had like a couple of rear lights on and had a follow car as well. So, I mean, we were on pretty remote roads, so there wasn't a lot of traffic overnight, but yeah, definitely a follow car as much as possible. Because it was just pretty full on. And there was one particular night when they're looking at the map and the guys are showing me, like we've got this coming up, and then we're deciding when to stop to have a rest because I basically just kind of rode as much as I could until I was feeling so fatigued that I was like, this is just not safe anymore for me to continue. Or, I said to my crew, like, if you see me like struggling or weaving over the road or anything, just pull me off and, get me to sleep. So we'd already had that prearranged agreement. But there was one particular time when we stopped on the bike and I was actually really glad because the next day I started again at like 7 a.m. or something, and it was the most beautiful descent I've ever ridden on before. And I was really, really glad to do that during the daylight hours. So sometimes it was actually really fortunate decisions that we were making. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't.
And you definitely don't want to be making descents when you're half asleep.
not like that. It was a pretty steep, like pretty windy descent, like it was through this canyon area. It was beautiful, but yeah, no, I wouldn't want to be doing that at nighttime. Like we had really good bike lights, but at the same time, like you just when you're in such a fatigue state as well, you really got to be careful.
And there's always a chance of wildlife or something. You don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thankfully, like we actually got away like pretty unscathed. Like there wasn't any really near misses or anything. So I was very lucky.
Well, that's a boring story.
Sorry, I didn't almost die.
All right. So the bike portion of the race is 640 kilometers. Is that correct?
Yeah. About that.
And you did that in 51 hours and 21 minutes. I'm guessing after doing 421 kilometers for an Ultraman, you weren't too concerned about the bike. You can kind of go on your own schedule and.
Yeah.
But how were you feeling about Badwater? You were saying that this is an event that you kind of wanted to do anyway. 217 kilometers is a lot more than 84 kilometers. They got the couple mountain passes that you're going to go over to get to Whitney and go up Whitney. So, and then you're also going through the national park. Did you guys have to get permits to go through there? What was going on with that?
Yeah, so that's the kind of a bit of a sus part about this whole thing. Is like we're not in a race. So if anyone asks us, we're actually not in a race, kind of because we didn't want to get pulled off the course. We're just out running. And actually there was other people out running. So it wasn't completely ridiculous that we're out running through Death Valley. But one of the rangers actually, I think, came up to Will and was just like, what's this, Uberman thing, because like they saw like the folder with, Uberman written on it in the car and things. And he's like, oh, like I'm a paramedic. I'm just supporting my friend through this, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. I think they just don't want, mass people doing these things, which, I totally understand. They have to, preserve everything and protect it.
Yeah.
So in terms of the run, I think I was just excited. Like, it's the last portion of it. I didn't know how I was going to respond to it. I didn't know how I was going to go. It was just going to be, well, we're just going to have to see how it is. And it was the one part of it that I didn't actually really have a plan for. It was we'll just run, sleep, run, deal with the heat. The only thing is I didn't really want to be running in the middle of the day through the hottest part of the day as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that's when I was planning my sleeps, and I wanted to try and run at nighttime as much as possible just to be able to, through Death Valley. But the other thing that they don't, like, I'd heard other people talk about it on other podcasts, is that you don't realize how cold it gets at nighttime through the desert, which is something that I really was mindful of. And there was one time when I was just freezing when we were running up to, it was the town before you get to Lone Pine, place that we stopped. But like mine was running next to me and we were both just freezing, and I was running faster and longer stretches than I normally would have just because I was so cold. It was just, it was really, really interesting. But I'd already, because you come over the mountain.
I guess because this is in October and Badwater, they run like in the heat of the summer in July, August, July. Yeah. So even though it gets cool in the evenings, it's probably not as much as in October.
No, I wouldn't think so. I mean, and it's not as hot. Like, it was probably like 40, 45 degrees. So it was like hot, but it wasn't, the 120 Fahrenheit or whatever it gets to for Badwater.
Yeah.
It was still hot enough. Thank you very much. I still suffered a lot. And also like, I found the desert, like the dust and everything really irritated my throat. And it so that was something, again, I didn't realize was going to be an issue. Like it wasn't a massive issue, but it was definitely something that, I just kind of found myself wheezing, more than I ever would.
So much of these ultra races is about dealing with the issues that come up. How you deal with them, how the crew deals with them, how you do it as a team, whether it's mental or mechanical. It could be you or the crew with the mechanical, whether it's weather, whether it's wildlife, forest fires, or
we had fires.
So how well do you feel you were actually prepared? And then how many contingencies did you kind of already have in the background for your race?
I actually feel like I was really prepared just based on experience. Like I remember talking to one of my crew, Josie, and I said to her, I was like, there is nothing that I'm doing during this race that I haven't done before, I haven't thought about, really. Like, I think it was probably the most prepared I've ever been.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and it was the best I was ever really physically able to do it, because because I didn't push the pace at all. Like, I had not planned to go hard at all. It was just a pure survival. So it was just one of those, like, I was able to manage nutrition really well. I mean, like, my mouth was completely salt burnt, and I had really, really bad ulcers that really like affected me. But then, I was like, okay, so then how do I do with this? Just get some Listerine mouthwash and, use that and just try and burn them away. Like in the
So that was Will's job. Get the car, go get some Listerine.
Oh my God, he had so many errands to run. It was so helpful. Yeah, like, and I knew, like, after a period of time, I'd get sick of one particular food, so, like, move on to something else, or, just try different things. Like climbing on the bike, if it was getting too hot, I just sit in the car in the aircon for a period of time and then get back on the bike again. Like, because I, as a racer, have a really good poker face, and so people don't actually generally know how I'm feeling until I tell them. And I've learned over the time, I'm like, I have to tell people if I'm struggling, because they won't know. And so I get really good at communicating with that as well. And people are like, oh, really? Oh, you looked really strong. And I was like, oh, no, like, I'm half asleep, and I'm like, I know when my mood drops, when I get really, really angry, I'm like, okay, problem solved, try and eat something, is something sore, is something going in? And it's like, the last thing is always, you just need sleep. And at one stage I was like, can you just find somewhere for me to pull over and sleep, because I'm not coping right now? And they're like, oh, okay, sure. Like, so yeah, I don't think, like, there was a few things that, kind of came out of left field, but it wasn't anything massive that I couldn't deal with.
Yeah.
And I was actually really surprised, because in Epic 5, I had really quite severe swelling of my legs because of all the plane flights and all the continuous days of running.
Yeah.
Whereas in Uberman, my feet didn't start swelling until the run. And so, because I'd learned during Epic 5 that my feet swell sideways before they swell lengthways, that I bought a pair of size shoes one up. So then when they started swelling, then I'm like, okay, time to change shoes. Whereas in Epic 5, we're like performing surgery on the feet, on the shoes, and like, cutting sides out so my feet could like stretch out to the sides, and like all these little things that I'd learned over the years about myself. And like, I had compression socks on. I'm like, I'm just going to leave them on because if I take them off and put them back on again, then, like, gives my legs time to swell. And so it's just all these little things.
Right now, there's people listening to the podcast writing down, get shoes one size bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so worth it, because like, it saved blisters. Like, I had a pressure sore level blister from Epic 5, whereas I only had just minor blistering in Uberman, because I'd learned how to deal with it. So it's just,
Is there one great success story for your team dealing with adversity that you like? You're like, that was a real bummer, and like we handled that great, whether it was Uberman or Epic 5 or whatever.
I think just Epic 5, just the crew surviving and not tearing each other's heads off. Like, they did amazing. I'm blown away by how little sleep that they all got, and how they still just managed to keep it all together and not show me basically any of what was, just because of how much they had to deal with as well. It was just incredible. Yeah. And I think like with Uberman as well, like there was one night when they couldn't, like the guys couldn't get accommodations, so they ended up just staying up, and they're like, it's fine, we'll be right. I'm like, okay. But yeah, like every time they saw me, like everyone was just so positive and upbeat, and I love having people run with me. And so, like they all took it in turns. They all, just had a great time. And they all, like, afterwards, they're like, thank you so much for letting us be involved in all of this. Like, it was amazing. It was life-changing for them as well. So,
yeah,
it was pretty incredible. It was amazing.
So you finally finish your run. You're at the Whitney portal there. Who happens to be there for you? Is it like Epic 5 where it's your crew, or were there other people around for this? Was Adam's crew around, or had they already left at that point? What was it like for your giant finish line?
My giant finish line. Oh, so good. So Adam had come and like seen me when I was climbing Mount Whitney, but then they had to go and catch flights.
Okay.
Dan had seen me when I think I was in Lone Pine, and he was like, look, I have to get back. So he couldn't, but it was absolutely perfect. I have to say, like, it was the most amazing finish. Like, all the crew that were there at the end, like, they're all with me. And then I just had a few random walkers and hikers and people around. Like, I had, so funny, like, I did not have to say one thing about what I was doing because all my crew were just fielding questions from everybody else around. That was awesome. And I had these two people who I wouldn't be able to pick them out of a lineup. I would have no idea what they looked like. But I just remember that they were driving up the hill when they saw me going up, and they're like, something's happening here. We need to hang around and find out what's going on.
Oh.
So that was really lovely. I had a bunch of people, just random people who were there, day hikers and things, and they were all, getting really excited and caught up in all the excitement of it all as well. So it was really, really beautiful. It was really, really, really nice way to finish it. And just, be embraced by my crew and just, have that celebration with everybody there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was awesome.
And did Steve King ever pop up in the middle of nowhere the way he does and start announcing?
I'm surprised you didn't. That would have been like the icing on the cake. Oh my God. I love that man. Yes. No, unfortunately he didn't.
Yeah. Well, you've been giving some really good tips during our conversation today. But people listen to this because they do want to learn more. So what is the best advice that you would give someone who was wanting to do this? And in addition to that, would you crew for somebody that wanted to do it? Because they want your advice.
I do love crewing. Yes, I would crew. Obviously, you have to take into consideration family commitments and everything else. But no, 100%. I love crewing. It's as much fun as racing for me. Whenever I have anyone contact me asking questions, if it's training related questions, I put them on to Kate because I don't have training answers. I'm like, I just do as I'm told. I don't know. And she's always more than happy to help out. But otherwise, generally what I do is I send people a link to my race report because I'm very detailed in what I write. And then I say, come back to me with further questions because potentially what you're going to be asking I've already actually answered. Right. But then, I'm like, anything you want to know, anything, just come and ask me. As I said, I'm an open book. I'm happy to try and help people be as successful as they can be in any of these events. So yeah.
Well, let's make sure that I have that link and I'll put it in the show notes so that people listening will also be able to just click right through from the show notes then.
Sure.
Yeah. So the 2019 results then, the 3 people that were participating, there was Jonathan Polchowski, who was 3rd that time in a total time of 191 hours and 42 minutes. Adam Scully Power was the, I guess, winner, if you can call him that, the fastest. He was the fastest at 125 hours and 45 minutes. And he set the men's course record doing that. But you got the women's course record in a total time of 135 hours and 55 minutes, which translates to 5 days, 15 hours and 55 minutes. Tell me, what did you take away from that? I know you've got some accolades that come with that best ever women's time. What were some of the prizes you got to hold up at the finish line?
Prizes? What are you talking about? There's no prize money. So it's so funny, like, at the end of all these, epic 5, we've got like, this beautiful big bowl, and, like at the end of Ultraman, you get these beautiful statues and everything. Uberman, they give you like this teeny tiny little pin that has a U on it. And that's it. And no, it's actually, it's cool. Like you get, there's a big hammer that Dan gives to, someone on your crew. So then you can like hold it up at the end. And, he's like, his thing is, about drop the hammer or something. And that's the reference to that. And then you get your name put on a little dog tag that goes on the box of the hammer. And so then that gets passed on to all successful athletes every year after that. Nice. So so that's pretty cool. As I said, like I've got the women's course record overall, and if anyone wants to come and beat that, go for your life. I'll help you as much as I can to
And
be
the
able to
swim
do that.
course
But
record?
it is, and the swim course record overall, which I'm very, very proud of as well. So we'll just, wait and see for anyone else. But it's such a huge commitment to do. There's not a lot of people out there who are able to commit the amount of, time and space to be able to get to there. I've had a lot of people contact say, I'd love to do it,
Right.
but I'm waiting for someone to actually be able to go and do it, not get injured or, have, global pandemics overtake their ability to be able to do these things. So I'm hoping more people will, but we'll just wait and see.
When I was looking it up, I was only able to find results to 2019, and then I'm guessing pandemic and whatever. Do you know, has anybody done it since 2019?
Yeah, there is one guy who was crewing on the boat for Adam. Can't remember his name. He ended up getting out of the swim a few kilometres before the shore because he was getting stuck with the currents. And so then he went back and finished the swim at the end. I know James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy, has done it as a team. He did the bike leg and then had two other people do the swim and run.
Okay.
But that's all that I know of who have completed it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not many people. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, you said you're kind of in your mom mode right now, and you've got a baby that's probably born by the time this is released.
Let's hope so.
So what is next for you? Do you have something on a bucket list? Is there 5 years from now when the kids are both toddling around and off to school, maybe I can get back into this? Or what's the time frame, and what do you still got lined up that you want to accomplish?
Ultraman Hawaii, 100%. That's on my list. But I don't want to put a timeline on it. I want to just, when I'm ready to start getting back into doing those kind of things. How long's a piece of string in terms of my bucket list? I've got so many things that I want to do. I've spoken to Kate before actually about, Ironman things. She's like, would you be interested in doing another Ironman? I was like, only if it's one of those really hard ones. I'd go to Wales and I'd go do one of their triathlons, Ironman distance races. I want hard, I want, epic courses. So things like that. And what really draws me to a race is something that intimidates me, something that scares me, something that excites me. That's kind of my criteria when I'm picking something that I want to do. So who knows? My husband does love Whistler, so your race is going to be on the list if it's continuing on in however many years when I'm coming back to ultra racing. I've never been there, so that's somewhere I'd love to go. I'd love to take the family, but I don't want to put a time frame on when I will be coming back because I don't want any pressure on myself. So it's when the time's right, then it'll happen.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Well, listen, Melissa, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me and share your stories, especially the Uberman story, because I know a lot of people are looking at that as something that they might want to take on. Again, check the show notes, and I will put the links in to have that go to your race report, and then other contact information for you for people that might want to reach out and get some info on that. And of course, everybody knows how to get in touch with Kate from my previous episode with her if you need coaching for it.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, I'll go back to her when I'm ready to start going back to structured training. She's awesome. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much. Good luck with this baby that's coming or has already come, depending on how you're listening to this.
Thank you so much.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.